Paltrocast.
Chris, aside from having to talk to this guy, how is your day going so far?
Well, it's very good to talk to you, obviously. So it's improving now that we are talking. But I'd say, it's always a nice thing about Wednesdays. You've had the beginning of the week to stage how things are going to be, and you still have the second half in the event that it's gone awry to improve it. So I can't complain.
Cool. Well, can I compliment you, or are you maxed out on compliments today?
Well, I don't believe anyone's truly ever maxed out on compliments. But you know what? At the end of the day, all positivity is welcome, as you know.
Okay. Well, most people in entertainment, just if they're lucky, find success in one area. And you found success as a writer, a director, a producer. Those are three totally disconnected jobs. People are used to saying writer, director, or director, producer. But for example, producer is looking at the budget a whole lot more than the writer is looking at the creativity. And the director is just juggling 25 things at once, etc. So what are you? Are you a writer who happened to find success as a producer and director? What are you?
I guess you'd say I'm a hybrid. I guess I've proven that over the past, decade plus. And it's interesting too, because I think we're in this really exciting time where so many people do so many different things. And it's actually a benefit across the board when someone has a particular expertise and continues to grow. And I've, at least for my part, found it to be one of the most exciting things about this business because I didn't know when I was a teenager that I'd want to work in film. It wasn't something that I'm going to say drawn to. I was drawn to it as a fan, but I would tell you that the 18-year-old version of me would have a big problem with the adult version of me today being like, what happened on your journey? This isn't what we had planned. And so I would say that my career is one of those things that it hasn't necessarily been a plan. It's just been a fortuitous circumstances of events. And, because of that, because of all the great people that I've had the opportunity to collaborate with, I've learned a little bit, not just about what I want to do, but quite a bit about myself as I've gone. It's been a really, really interesting opportunity because here I am at this age now looking back and I'm kind of giving myself permission to be a creative. There are so many people that when they're 10 years old, they direct their first film or they do these things and they know beyond a reasonable doubt, this is exactly what I want to do. And it didn't come to me until later. So for me at this stage as a creative, as a director, it's really been more about me giving myself permission to say that it's okay to collaborate. It's okay to do this. But I would say that a lot of that was in its foundation in the beginning of my career, starting out as an executive, becoming a producer. It helped me a lot to understand not even just the languages that everyone spoke in these different jobs, but what made their jobs important, not just to them, but to the community, the creative community at large. Because I would say to you, I view filmmaking as the ultimate team sport. It's a lot like playing baseball. And so as a result of it, you could have a pitcher that's throwing 102 miles per hour, but eventually somebody's going to hit the ball and you got to be out there in the outfield to catch it. And that to me is filmmaking. And because of the experiences I've had, it's helped me appreciate and learn to communicate in probably the healthiest of manners, at least for me. And so I would say that I embrace that hybrid moniker just for that reason.
So what was the first feature that you worked on where you felt, okay, this is a career, not just a bunch of one-offs? Because let's face it, the first time you sell a book or have a movie made, you're kind of going, oh, I hope this happens again. And then after it happens 5, 6 times, I assume you go, no, this is going to happen again.
That's a great question. I appreciate that. I have to tell you that for me, it actually wasn't in the beginning of my career. It happened to be kind of a right around the middle. My current production partner, Clay Baccord, and I had did this film called The Big Wedding with Lionsgate. It starred Robert De Niro, Diane Keaton, and it's a delightful comedy that really is completely different than what we had intended it to be initially. And as a producer on the project, I had been in the industry at that point for, gosh, the better part of 5 years. And at that point, it still felt like just the house is money. I'm just going with what comes out and we're just figuring things out. And it was somewhere along the line of, I think on that cast, we had, 5 Academy Award winners in the cast. We had we got to collaborate with Robin Williams towards the end of his time, and I learned a lot from all of these people. But even Anthony Katagis is a great producer, and he was with us on that. And it was really for me putting all this giant group of people together on this big Lionsgate project that I really realized, oh, this isn't a hobby anymore. This is actually a job. And here I was in my late 20s, getting into my late 20s, and at that point, I think that that's a big thing. We kind of all tell ourselves what we're going to be, and we go through these different phases of teenagers and university age, and then recently graduated. We think we have it all figured out at 22, 23. And then
Right,
you get into your mid, what do they call it? The quarter life crisis, I get. You
right,
get to
right.
that. And at that point in time, my grandfather was a really important person. He's an important person in my life, and he had told me, I think this is what you're going to be doing. I'm saying, Grandpops, no, you're crazy. Like, I'll go back to Wall Street. I'll figure something else out. And it was all on that set. We were in Greenwich, Connecticut for, gosh,
Mhm.
2.5 months. And it all just came together for me, I saw everything from everyone that was working on it, the ADs, the producers, the actors. It all just clicked. And I thought, I actually see myself doing this in the future. And that was really around the time that I started to feel, oh goodness, maybe I do have a creative itch. Maybe I do have stories I want to tell. And I think it all kind of comes to the fruition of just that process for me.
Had you been to Los Angeles before you worked in entertainment?
Yes, I was actually. And I will tell you, my very first trip to Los Angeles, I was on my way back from, because I had split some time when I was growing up to being in the States and then abroad. And I was on my way to Brisbane, Australia, and I was on the way through Philadelphia. It was one of those times, in the 90s where everything had like six different stops no matter where you were going.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I remember going Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh to Los Angeles, and I had a couple of days there, and I might have been 11 years old at the time, and I was literally about to jump a plane to Brisbane, and I just remember looking around and going, "Why would anyone live here?" Now, of course, this is a teenager going through these experiences, and
Oh,
and
I get it.
not
But
knowing.
I have to interrupt you. The first one or two times I went to LA, I hated it. I think,
Did you?
yeah, I hated it. And then the third or fourth trip, I went, this is perfect. I
It
want to
clicked
be
for
here
you
a
on the
lot.
third time. It clicked, and like most things in life, I find things click. And for me, I didn't return again until I'd have been in my late teens, and it was the complete polar opposite effect of being effectively 11 years old and then being 16, 17 at the time. And I went, why would anyone not? And I remember also coming from a Philadelphian winter and landing out there. It might have been the month of February and going, why would anyone want to leave this place? And then, of course, I had friends at that point that were out there. And that really is so much of things, right? The relationships we build in our lives and where we connect with people, where we
Right.
find ourselves. And I started to fall in love with Los Angeles in my teens. And that's one of the things that continues to this day. I split half of my year out there, and I'm grateful to be in Southern California now whenever I have the chance.
A recurring theme that I notice in successful entertainment professionals who have Australian roots is that rarely did they find any success in Australia, meaning that they came to LA or they came to New York, and that's when everything happened. That's the case of Nikki Whelan. That's the case of Louis Mandylor. Like all these people that I interview, I say, so tell me about what is popular of what you do in Australia, and they like nothing happened for me in Australia. I have it. That seems to be kind of the case for you, that it's a US UK based career that you have.
And it's interesting because I'm yet to shoot in Australia, which is crazy to
Yeah,
say.
so you
And
keep that trend up.
I had to say it. I mean, but what I will tell you is this: is that one of the things that's great about people with Australian roots is that it's a palpably global community. Anywhere you go, you see someone that spent time in Australia. You see each other across the restaurant, across the bar, and you immediately start owing, and you can't help it. It's part of it, right? And I mean, goodness, you can imagine how it's been the last month and a half with the Matildas going to the semis in the Women's World Cup, and so it's one of the things that I like about connecting with other people who spent time in that part of the world and grown up, even in New Zealand. Is this community, and everyone finds each other no matter where they are in the globe. For me, I started when I went to university. I went to Villanova,
Mhm.
and as a result of it, I didn't spend much time back in that part of the world after that, and so it was a natural growth for me to be stateside and in Europe. But what I will say is, Australia is is its own unit, has its own film community, its own filmmaking style. It's very similar to, back in the 90s and 2000s, you would watch an episode of Doctor Who, and they'd say that looks and feels like an English piece of programming. Australia has curated that over the past,
Sure.
2 decades. And you see it now as we have this appetite, this voracious appetite, no matter where we are in the globe. We see it with, Korean programming, Chinese programming, Australian programming, Central European programming. You see some of the things on Netflix that are hits are all entirely in Polish or German. And it's really exciting. And as we see these boundaries that we used to set, these labels grow and eventually come down, it's a really exciting time for Australian film. And so I would say 100% I'm very excited to go back and work. But to your point, sometimes it's just a weird thing of how we all grow and find where our careers are going to be.
Yeah, that's not just Australia. Say, how many artists can we think of that do the whole they're big in Japan, and then they can't get arrested in their homeland, or you find out that
Right.
somebody's only famous in one country and then they have a quiet life. But again, not the case with you. So my next question, I don't know if this is going to get a 10-second answer or a 10-minute answer.
I'll try 10 seconds.
But when I'm asking people these days, what are you working on? Usually the couple of barriers are there's some strikes going on, so I can't talk about stuff. There's a variety, a Hollywood Reporter thing that I'm waiting to come out, so I can't talk about that. Or I don't like to talk about things before they happen, etc. Now, as a person who juggles a lot of projects, are you allowed to say what's coming next, what's new, what we should be looking for from Chris Robert?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we're really excited, and you're right, the strikes are very important and everything that's going on in the business, it's at a critical juncture and, it will affect all the generations coming. And so being a member of the Writers Guild, obviously I'm very excited for these two, parties to come and have a sensible conversation and understand each other's perspectives, because that's really all labor strife is the attempt to try to bridge the gap and understand a mandate from a corporation and what a body of people who are collaborating with the corporation to give them the engine that powers the corporation to have them understand one another. And so, sometimes there's posturing with that, and that's been within the labor history since the Industrial Revolution of everything that we've gone through. So, with that being said, obviously I'm very excited for that. But some things that happened before the strikes began, is the film that Rainmaker Films, my company, and Panay Films, collaborate on, called Expectations, and we're really excited about it. It's in its last couple of months here, the post-production process, which for me as a filmmaker on the filmmaking side is one of the most exciting, because I have such an appetite when working with the creatives and the coloring department, in the visual effects, and the folks at Panay are so talented. They've obviously done quite a many features and quite a many commercials as well that we see, in the Super Bowl with T-Mobile and Microsoft and the like. And so it's been great to collaborate with that post-production team and our very talented composers, something that for me as a creative, music speaks to me entirely. So it's so exciting. And we at Rainmaker, we had a film called To Catch a Killer that starred Shailene Woodley that was in theaters earlier this summer.
Right.
Which is me wearing, the producing hat on it. But here with the creative hat, I get the chance on Expectations to kind of dive in with the great Sherry Chung, the great composer from Riverdale. And we just have been working on like orchestral, compositions, collaborations with musicians and the like. And so it's been really, really riveting for me as a music fan. I write to music even. So as we get to this part of the process, it's extremely exciting. And when, of course, the writer's strike is completed, I'm really excited to get back into some of the work I was doing before the strike. There's a project in particular that I'm writing for Rainmaker, which is really exciting. And it's, I'll have to save some of the details, but needless to say, it's actually about a lady who's one of the most accomplished in sport in her field. And when you hear a little bit about it, and hopefully the next time we talk, I'll be able to get into it. She's like a real life superhero, overcoming health adversities, losses in her family, to become the first woman in her sport to achieve something that is just beyond recognition. And she's a real life person and a dear friend to me. So to be able to be the custodian to tell her story is an incredible honor. And I can't wait to continue working on it once we're all sorted and, things can move forward in a very healthy manner.
The composer that you just mentioned, Riverdale, one of the few long running shows that regularly has music in it, original music. because you had a bunch of singing characters, which is a rarity in television. So did you seek out that composer, or was that a friend, or?
That composer, so Sherry is, as a composer, is someone I have been following her work really for the last couple of years. Interestingly enough, my wife is actually an actress, and she was on a show that Sherry was composing. And if you ever get a chance to speak to my wife, you'll see she is not villainous at all, but she has been on a villain kick since she was part of The Leftovers. She played Christina in The Leftovers, which was kind of heroic. But the last
Is
couple of
that
roles she's
Annie?
portrayed, yes, that's Annie, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Annie, who
so
we're going to see in Expectations.
yes, you will definitely see her in Expectations. Stealing a few scenes as well. Both her and Samuel Arnold from Emily in Paris. If you're a fan of his work,
Sure.
he's quite a joy to watch, and what he does as Bernard in Expectations. Well, I'll just leave it to you to watch it and hopefully have a few laughs. But the composer Sherry, she had worked with her on a show and composed her villainous anthem, and it's a very interesting twist how you could take someone who's such a lovely person. Obviously, I'm married to her, so I'd have to say that. But beyond that, objectively, she's a lovely person, and make her just sound like kind of like a very intimidating character. And so that immediately caught my eye. And when it comes to selecting composers, for me, it really is sitting down and having a conversation. And we don't talk about film at all. We actually just talk about musical influences, things we've seen recently. We don't actually ever talk about the specifics. And with Sherry, it was a really exciting conversation. We ended up going to the Soho House and having a glass of wine that turned into coffee and dinner. And it ended up being this marathon of a conversation that lasted, I don't know, maybe a good 6 or 7 hours, I guess it was. The sun was up and it was completely down by the time it was over. And so, and at that point in time, I didn't even know she had worked on Riverdale. It was just this connection. And so, as we got into it, and we started going into the studio together, I began to realize how extensive her resume was, and she's also the music governor, for her union as well, and just the important role she plays, and what everyone sort of does, and the connectivity of this, and the artists and the business. And so, it was kind of a no-brainer at that point when meeting such an impressive person to collaborate. And I've been having a ton of fun with her, and we're just really lucky to have her on board this project.
Well, to wrap up and summarize what I've learned today, Expectations is coming with a great cast and great team behind it. There's other stuff in the works once the strike and all that's wrapped up. You continue to grow. You got a lot of gratitude. Eventually, you'll be big in your home country. But for now, the rest of the world works. But hey, Chris, thank you for your time. I'm really looking forward to whatever's coming next whenever it's ready.
I appreciate it. Always a good time to talk to you. And thanks again for the time. And just, have a really nice Wednesday. Like I said, so much to look forward to yet before the end of the week.
Paltrocast.